Hey, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening. And this evening we are actually going through English composition skills for examination success. Okay. My name is Hugh. I'm the head of curriculum at the Eton Academy, and with me today I have Jessie, who is a senior teacher as well as a center leader at the Eton Academy as well.
Hello,
Okay.
everyone.
Okay, so thank you for joining us once more. Okay, so what are we gonna discuss tonight? We're gonna discuss composition skills for primary four all the way to primary six. Now, the reason why we also included primary four student parents, such as yourselves, is that you are getting ready for the PSLE, which is in 2 years. So it's all this is actually very good for you in preparation for that. Yep. A lot of the skills we're going to be discussing actually still applies to what your children do even at a primary four level. Okay, right. So let's just get down to it right now. Okay, so as I already introduced ourselves, let me just move on from here. Okay. Okay, so maybe we'll just start with a simple poll first before answering this question. Let me just get a gauge as to what kind of parents we have today. Let me just start a poll. Just indicate what level your child is in. All right, simple one. Okay, let me just hang on for a second. Let me just get this out. Okay, right. Okay, so I'm going to launch a poll right now. Okay. And yeah, just choose the level that your child is in, so we have a better idea of who is in attendance today. And perhaps we'll spend a little more time talking about specific things. Primarily, five and six is very, very similar. Yeah. But we will go through examples from primary six questions, PSLE questions as well. Okay. Okay, so looks like quite an even spread. Okay, we have quite a few primary six students, parents for primary six students here. Mm, okay, let me just leave it on for maybe. Oh, okay, all the res everyone has responded. Okay, great. Let me just end the poll. Okay, it seems like we have more primary six parents right now, so that's good to know. You're in the right place. Okay. Let me just continue. All right. Okay, so right now, um, the first question we actually want to ask you is what kind of feedback has your child's English teacher shared about his or her progress in writing? Okay. Um, we want to know this because generally we get quite a few responses from our students, parents as well, and we just want to see if it's similar to what you are experiencing. Okay, so I think you can actually feel free to use the chat and just type in, the type of feedback that your teacher has shared about your child's writing. Let me just give you maybe 2 minutes. Yeah, just fill in anything that you recall your teacher has said, your child's teacher has said about their writing. Okay, let's see. Okay, right. So I see a few things here. I see things like stories are a bit out of point. Yes, yes, for sure. Um language marks not very high. Okay, yeah. So this issue with language. Okay, got that. Underdeveloped story. Yes. Okay. So all that's really related, and it is really what we hear that's the same kind of feedback from the parents at Eton Academy as well. Okay. Okay. So essentially, these are the things that are quite common, right? And of course, this would be your concern, right? This would be a concern. Not developed, the stories are out of point. My child has struggles with expressing his or her story ideas. I think that's also a fairly common one, right? They are not sure how to express their thoughts into words, into stories. Yep. Yeah, language score is not too high. Okay. So today we're going to address these things and we're going to go through basically what they need to ensure that this is not the feedback you hear anymore, and it's all going to be good feedback from now on. Okay. All right. So let's just go to the next slide here. Okay. Now, we're going to start with firstly the changes for PSLE this year. I think some of you might be familiar. Okay, because in for this year, they've actually adjusted the way the writing component for PSLE is structured. Okay, so previously, um, paper one, which is actually the writing paper, made up 27.5% of the entire grade. Okay. But now there's a reduction just to 25%. Okay, so it's 2.5% less. So from 55 marks to 50 marks. Okay. So I'm just going to go through with you where, and how this is going to be implemented. Okay. Okay, so the main difference here is actually in the situational writing. Okay, so again, if you are parents of primary five students, situational writing might still be new to you, because in primary four, this is something that they didn't do. Okay, so what is situational writing? Basically, it's where they ask you to write an email, a letter, or maybe a report. Okay, and it's based on a certain situation. Okay, very shortly, I'll show you an example of that, so you can see what I mean. Okay, so previously it was actually 15 marks, which is 6 marks for task fulfillment, 9 marks for language, right? But now there's a reduction to 14 marks. So it's a 1 mark reduction. Okay. So the task fulfillment of 6 marks, that still remains. But now there's only going to be 8 marks for language instead of 9. Okay. So that's just a mark reduction. Okay. But that's not all right? Okay. Okay, so you can see on the screen, I hope your screens are large enough to see this, but essentially this is the rubrics. So there is what we call the task fulfillment mark. So that's from 0 to 6. Okay, so if they address all the relevant points, they can get a full 6 marks. If they miss out 1 point, perhaps they'll get 5 or 4 marks, depending on what they've missed out as well. Okay. And of course, there is also a score given for language. So now it's upon 8. Previously it was upon 9. So it's a 1 mark reduction. Okay. So basically, language is still very important here. Mistakes in spelling and all that, they will also be penalized. Okay. But more than that, for situational writing, the language used is important. So, for example, let's say they're supposed to write something in more of a formal context. If they use informal words, they will also be penalized in the language and organization component. Okay, right. So just a very brief description. Okay, now let me just show you the thing that is different from this year. So previously I talked about the task fulfillment. So essentially there will be some points that your children need to include in their response. Okay, be it an email or a letter or a report or whatever they ask to write. Usually they will give you maybe like 5 bulleted points, and they have to cover all 5, but that is the 6 marks that we're talking about here. Okay. In the past, everything was clearly in the question itself. So the students could actually refer to it and pick out the responses fairly simply. Okay. Now, the change this year is that there'll be 1 point which requires the student to come up with his or her own idea. Okay. Now, when we say his or her own idea, it doesn't mean something that's really random. It'll be based on the situation, as I mentioned earlier. So there'll be a point which asks your child to come up with a reasonable response. Okay, so I'll show an example so it's a bit clearer for you. Okay, so now this is an example of a question. Now I couldn't use a PSLE question because basically this is new. It's going to start this year with the new format, right? So this is a question that possibly they would see. There's a situation going on. Basically, there are students talking, and there's something about an assignment going on, right? So Ben and Jack talking to Mia, and essentially Jack and Ben, all right, they're discussing this, and one of them is going to offer some help to the other person to get the assignment done. Okay, so that's the situation. Now, the question will look something like this, all right? Says your task. So imagine you are Ben. So, okay, so oftentimes they'll tell you who you are in this situation. So that's also very important for the student to understand. Because uh be if they write as a wrong person, that they will also be penalized in this whole assignment. Okay, so it says imagine you're Ben, write an email to your teacher to request for an extension of the deadline for the English project. Okay, so this is the whole task, what this is all about. Now, if you notice, right, there's some bulleted points below. So this is where all the content marks are going to come from. Okay, the task fulfillment marks. And if you notice, the last one is underlined. Now, this is the special one, which is only going to start this year, where they have to actually come up with a response of their own. All right. So this one says exactly how you plan to help Jack with his research. Now, as I said in the past, right, everything is actually given in the stimulus. Let me just go back to this again, right? So everything will be actually stated here pretty clearly for them to extract the information, right? In this new one, that last point, there's nothing here that says exactly how he is going to help. So if, let me just draw your attention to the bottom here. It says, let me do it right after school. I can also help you with the research, Jack. So this is Ben offering to help Jack. Okay. But it doesn't say exactly what he's going to do. How is he going to offer the help? Right. So this is the difference right now. Okay. So let me just go back to the question here. Oh, yeah. Okay. So exactly how you plan to help Jack with research. So what this means is that the student can respond in a variety of ways. Okay. Because as long as they think of something that is logical, that makes sense, right? The mark should be given to them. Okay. So like how can they help? So for example, let's say Ben proposes, oh, I can help you find out specifically about this or that, right? Okay. Okay, let me just go back very quickly. Um, yeah, okay, so research, like so specifically, maybe I can help you do a Google search on the topic, something like that, something very specific. Okay. They can't just say, oh, I can help you without explaining what help this person is going to offer, right? What help you're going to offer to Jack. If you write something like that, the child will not get the mark. Okay, so this has to be specific. And as I said earlier, it has to be logical. You can't just write something that is really illogical, like maybe, oh, yeah, I can help you. Don't worry. Leave it all to me, right? I'll just do it for you or something like that. So that kind of response is not going to be deemed as correct. Okay, so I hope you guys got this. Now, we're not going to spend so much time on situational writing because this is more for continuous writing, but I just thought it's good that you know that there's a change this year. All right, okay, let me just move on. Now, for continuous writing, okay, there are also some changes here. Okay, the only change actually is the marks. So previously it was 40 upon 40 marks, but now it's been reduced to 36 marks. Okay, and for continuous writing, there is marks for content and also for language. So it's 18 for content and 18 for language, right? So you can see there, roughly this is what the rubrics would look like. Okay, so obviously we want to aim for the highest band, which is 16 to 18 marks, right? Okay, it's like fully adequate content and well-developed ideas. That's for content. For language, hardly any mistakes in grammar, spelling, punctuation, and so on, right? Okay, so for language, I think some parents think that as long as there's one mistake, they cannot get the full mark for language. Okay, so that's not true. It depends on the type of mistake. If it's something like a minor spelling error, they still can get the full marks for language. Okay. The other thing I hear both students and parents say is that, oh, there's no way they can get full marks for composition. Also untrue, because some students actually manage to get a full perfect score for composition at the PSLE level. Okay. I used to mark PSLE composition, so I know this to be true. Okay. Every year that I went, there was always at least at least three or four students who got a perfect score. All right. And that was just in the room I was in. So there are actually quite a few who managed to do it. Okay. So it is very possible. Okay. Right. Okay, let's just move on. Right. So again, I just want to bring you through some examples of the PSLE questions. Again, some of you might know already. You might have seen this floating around online, or maybe your child has bought the book, right? The 5-year series book. Okay. So last year, the question was about trying something new. Okay, so that is what they had to write about. Okay. And then they will also give you some reference questions. What was the new experience? How did it turn out? Okay. Um, this is essentially what they will see in the test, in the writing test. Okay. And it says here, write a composition of at least 150 words. Now, some students, right, especially those who don't like writing, they will say like, oh, 150 words. Okay, fine. Once I hear 150 words, then I'm done. Right? They're very happy to finish their story. Okay. But obviously, if they only write the story um for 150 words, the story is not going to be developed at all. Okay, because at this level, they should be writing way longer stories than that. Now, even if they are in primary four, right? Even if your child is in primary four, and I think at the primary four level, they probably say something like 120 words. It's still not enough for a well-written story. Okay, we'll show you later on what we mean by that. Okay. So essentially, this is the type of question they had last year. And there were some pictures as well, right? Okay, so the whole idea is that they'll also give you three pictures, and these pictures at the primary 5 and primary 6 level will be unrelated pictures. Okay, which means to say that each picture can spark a different story. Yep. I know that in some schools at the primary four level, the pictures might still be linked, so that helps the students think of a more structured story. But at primary 5 and 6 level, the pictures will all not be linked at all. Okay. They don't have to use all the pictures, obviously, right? They have to pick the picture which they can come out with the most interesting story. Okay. So there are two things they need to do. They need to look at the theme of the story. Okay. So once more, the theme is trying something new. And they have to feature one of these pictures in their story. Okay. So very quickly in the use of pictures, it's important that the picture is a crucial element in the story. Okay. If they just mention, for example, the sandwich, if they just mention the sandwich in passing, like, oh, they had a sandwich for lunch, and then the story continues without any more reference to the sandwich, and the sandwich has no other part in the story, that means that they did not make good use of the picture, and that will affect their content marks quite severely. Okay, so each picture must be used in the story and has to be a crucial element of the story. Okay, that's just again for you to realize. Okay, so there's a CC open house, a sandwich, and camping. Okay, now what we realized was that some children made some errors in these ways. All right, these were common pitfalls. Okay, so the theme was about trying something new. So some students, as they wrote their story, they didn't really specify clearly that it's a new experience. Okay, and if they don't do that, it doesn't quite align with the theme. Okay, some stories lacked a problem or a conflict. Okay, so what's that about? Later on, when Jesse brings you through how we go through story writing, there is always a problem or a conflict to add interest to the story. If there isn't a problem or isn't a conflict, then there's not much of a story to tell, essentially. right? It'll just be a normal thing happening on a normal day. And it doesn't really uh, build any interest at all. Yep. Uh, Another issue that some students face was that the conflict itself doesn't relate to the experience that is new, right? So, for example, let's say, they went camping and it's a new experience. The problem they had didn't relate to camping. It was something else that they could have had anywhere else. So there's no link to the theme again. Yep. Um, and the other issue that some students had was that because the theme was trying something new, they thought, okay, I'm just going to cram in as many new things as possible in this story. And when they do that, there's a lack of focus, right? There's a lack of focus. And because there's a lack of focus, you don't know exactly what they're talking about. And also, you can't really develop the new thing or new things that they actually tried. Okay. So, all these are the issues that some students had for last year's PSLE question. Yep. At any time, if you have any questions, you can simply type in the chat and we'll try to address these as well. Okay. Okay, let me just move on. Now, for the year before, all right, the 2023 question, it was on a change for the better. Okay. So again, if you notice, last year's question and the question before that, there is no clear indication of what kind of story it's gonna be, in a sense that it's not like in the past where the theme was very straightforward, like for example, they'll say something like um write about a bad experience, right? So it's very clear, you're gonna write about something bad. Okay. Nowadays, the questions that they ask are a little more open, which means that they have to think about how to make the story interesting by introducing their own conflict. So that's why in the previous slide I shared, some students couldn't come up with a conflict, right? So this is something that they have to learn how to do. So it doesn't matter what the theme is, they should be able to come up with their own conflict to match the theme, right? Okay, so this is a change for the better. Okay, so what change was needed? What actions were done to make the change? What improvements did the change bring? Okay, so let me very quickly look at the pictures right now. Okay, so these are the pictures. One is a messy room. The next one is someone jogging in the park, and then the third one is a computer, a laptop, right? Okay, so again, you can see the pictures are all unrelated. Um, the students could pick any picture to feature in the story. And once again, the picture has to be featured very strongly in the story. You can't just mention it in passing. Okay. Um, Common pitfalls that students had for this particular question. Okay. Not describing the situation before the change in detail. Okay. So because the theme is a change, right? There has to be a comparison. If they didn't really spend time talking about what the situation was before, then the idea of the change is not very strong. Okay. Second point, lacking a problem or conflict that warranted need for a change. So again, some students just, wrote things that are quite uh, I would say not not strong enough to warrant a change. Okay, so it could be perhaps this person kept oversleep, kept oversleeping because he kept playing using the computer. Okay, so that's a good idea, but the point is that, so what? What's the consequence of that? What prompted the person to want to change? Okay, so these are the kinds of things that they must also be thinking about. Yeah. And yeah, and also when they end the story, there has to be some kind of growth because it's about change. So there has to be some character growth here. So if they are not clear in showing that, yeah, that also would affect their overall score. Okay. Yeah, sorry, Jesse, can you help me check in with the chat? Are there any questions at this point?
Yes, there is one question.
All right. Can you?
So,
Yes.
for the plot, should students who are weaker in their language, for example, 8 out of 18 marks, should they keep the plot simple and like not too complicated?
That's a really good question. Okay. So the thing about writing is, as we said earlier, right? There are two that they are graded for content as well as for language. When we think of story ideas, content is very important. If they have a basic structure, a basic story idea, okay, and they follow that, they should be able to get a decent content score. Okay. However, we know that language is also really important, right? So the thing about language is that oftentimes, right, the language you use also aids in the content. Okay. So what I would say is content, yes, keep the story, I wouldn't say simple, but keep the story logical and as Jesse will go through later with you, follow the plan. Essentially, once you come up with a plan, follow that plan. Okay. We don't want to miss any content point. So that's the first thing, right? And then from there, slowly build on language, right? Slowly build on writing techniques that will aid in both language as well as content as well. So again, Jesse will take you through how we do that at the Eton Academy. Okay. Um, don't what we don't want is for students to just memorize phrases from from your model composition books and then just keep writing these phrases without any context. That's what some children do. They use a lot of big words, but it doesn't really make any sense at the end of the day. And I think that's far worse than being able to follow a plan, a simple plan that you come up with. Okay. All right. So I hope I've kind of answered your question at this point. Okay. Is there anything else, Jesse? No?
That's it for now.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Okay. Okay, so right now I will hand over to Jesse, who will take you through the writing of the composition itself and what we do at the Eton Academy uh in teaching writing. Okay. Let me see. Let me try and hand control over to you.
So make sure everyone can hear me okay as well. I believe they
Yeah,
can.
yeah,
Yeah.
you're loud and clear. Okay. I think I've done that. Jesse, can you see if you can control it?
Mm, not at the moment.
No, still no. Okay,
We
hang
lo oh no, sorry. I love technology.
on. Are you good?
Nope.
No? Okay, let me try one more time. Uh, I think you can, can you? No?
No.
Okay, that's all right. No worries. I'll do it for you then. Okay.
Okay,
Okay. Yeah.
so just to start us off for the moment. So yeah, today I'll walk you through essential strategies from planning to polishing, so you'll feel better equipped to support your child's writing journey at home. So we'll start here with the planning, and I'm going to stick to a clear structure. So, because a strong composition always begins with a solid plan and a clear structure, encourage your child to spend maybe 5 to 7 minutes planning before they're writing. They should ask themselves, who is the main character? Um, what is the problem or the conflict? How does the story build up? What is the climax? And how does it end? So, a simple but effective structure is the 5 point plot, which is the beginning, still on the last slide.
I'm sorry.
The beginning, the conflict, the middle, the resolution, and the end. So, using a story mountain can help visualize the natural flow of the story and guide the development of each part. So, it's important to remind your child that this stage is for jotting down key ideas. There's no need to include descriptive language or writing techniques here. The goal is to build a clear skeleton before fleshing it out on the writing page.
Sorry,
Okay.
Jesse, let me just add a little more here. So I
Yeah.
this is the a really important step which many students uh forgo, right? The planning stage, right? So just again answering the question earlier, if your child has a clear story idea, even if it's a simple one, they should write it down and stick to that plan. Okay. So sometimes students if they don't do that, they get lost halfway through. or they forget, okay, or they suddenly think of a new idea and then they start going on a tangent, which will actually affect number one, the score, and also it will affect the time that they have to finish the story as well. Yeah. Okay, sorry. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, next slide. Thanks.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
So, with story planning being such a vital stage, we reinforce this regularly through recaps in our journals at the Eton Academy. So, these fun, like focused activities, they help students internalize the different story elements, making planning a routine rather than an afterthought. While detailed planning and story mountains are great, obviously for practice, it's important to remember that during exams, that time is limited. So students won't have the luxury of drawing out a full plan. Instead, they need to mentally run through the structure, visualizing the natural flow and progression of the story before they begin. Okay, so starting with a bang. You just start your story with a hook. So, a weak or generic beginning can cause the reader to lose interest immediately. So, instead, we teach your child to start with a bang. This means an engaging hook, such as a sound effect, dramatic dialogue, or an intriguing action. So, for example, "You'll regret this," I whispered, staring at the mess I had created. So this opening instantly raises questions and pulls the reader in. Yeah. Actually, I'm just wondering, can anyone name any like books or films or songs that you can think of that maybe start with a bang? You can always write some of any examples in the comments. I'll give you a moment if you have anything. I know
Hmm.
for me, actually, recently I just went to see Wicked at the theatre, and their very first line of their first song is "Good news, she's dead." So that's quite dramatic, and it definitely intrigues you from the start. Yeah.
Yeah, feel free to type in the chat if you've got any interesting starts that you've read or seen on TV.
I think I have control of the.
Oh yeah, there we go.
I have control now.
Okay, good.
Sorry. Thank you. Okay. Okay. So, Hugh, if you see any examples in the chat, feel free to bring them up.
Okay, sure. Let's continue.
Okay. So, one powerful technique here is actually starting in the middle of the action. This drops the reader right into a dramatic moment, creating immediate engagement. So, for example, rain pelted my face as I sprinted across the school field, heart pounding. So this is great use of dialogue, but also it really captures the reader's attention straight away. So you need to remind your child that the first sentence really sets the tone. So we need to try and make it count. Another example is a character snapshot. It's a great way for the reader to quickly understand who the character is and why they act the way that they do. So it doesn't need to be long, but it should give a glimpse into the character's personality, values, or background. So, for example, think about Harry Potter, a character that many children and adults know and love very well. So, we still feel the same connection to him if we didn't know about his backstory,
Mm.
about his life under the stairs, his fears, his dreams? Would we still feel the same? I mean, probably not, to be honest. So, yeah, something to think about. Okay, another one is sensory language. So, using the five senses to describe a setting can instantly teleport readers into a scene, allowing them to fully experience what the characters are going through. So, this technique actually helps bring a setting to life and creates a vivid atmosphere that draws the reader in. Encourage your child to ask themselves, like, what can the characters see, hear, smell, feel, uh, and taste. So even including just like two or three of these, it really can make your writing a lot more powerful. Yeah. Okay. So now we need to develop the plot, making it very character driven. Okay. So this is the heart of the composition. Okay. This is where the bulk of content and language marks are earned. And a strong story must be character driven. Believable characters make believable decisions. Their personalities, thoughts, and emotions should drive the plot forward. Encourage your child to ask, what kind of person is my character? How would they react? What are they thinking or feeling? And this really helps readers to relate to characters, creating like an enticing emotional journey. Then we layer in the following writing techniques to elevate the story. Okay, so to aid our thinking when it comes to describing characters, we use the three A's: appearance, actions, and attitude. So this simple framework helps bring characters to life and makes their behavior throughout the story feel like more realistic and meaningful. So, for example, instead of simply writing Liam ran through the woods, consider why Liam is running. Is he chasing something, escaping something? So, hoping to prove himself. So, exploring your character's motivations adds richness and makes the story more engaging. Okay, so now show, don't just tell. So, rather than stating emotions plainly, like she was excited, encourage your child to paint a vivid picture. Her eyes lit up. She bounced on the balls of her feet, barely able to keep still as the envelope trembled in her hands. So, this technique engages the reader's senses and helps them feel the emotion themselves. Okay. So beyond show not tell, also known as show not tell, um, students can draw on a rich toolbox of techniques to elevate their writing. And these include, for example, well, there's a few different examples here, but I'll talk about similes and metaphors. So these, they add color and imagination. So for example, her voice was as soft as a feather, or fear wrapped around him like a tight blanket. So each of these tools, when used intentionally, uh, help students create more engaging and emotionally rich stories. They should, they show the examiner a range of language and make compositions truly shine. Okay. So another thing to take note of is we also understand that it can be really tricky to remember all of the different writing techniques, follow a plan, apply the correct spelling and punctuation, like all at once. It's so easy to trip up and make a mistake. So a helpful strategy is to draw out one short scene, frame by frame, almost like a slow motion replay. So this encourages detailed description without constant reminders from like teachers or parents. With regular practice, students can begin to self-monitor and include these aspects more independently, elevating their writing. Okay, so developing the plot some more is using dialogue and internal dialogue to bring characters to life and propel the story forward. So, for example, what do we do now? Amir asks, his voice barely above a whisper. So it reveals the character, the mood, and the motive. So, however, finding the right balance is key. So, too much dialogue can overwhelm the narrative. That's first of all. Additionally, accurate punctuation is vital. So, mistakes in this area can cost marks, especially during exams. That's why we focus on both content and language. Yeah.
Yes, and just to add to that, I've got students who put in too much dialogue. And when you read it, it seems as if you're just reading a script of some sort, right? So it's important that students also realize the dialogue has to be purposeful. So like everything that the characters say has to be for a reason, right? Is it to reveal what this person is thinking? Is it to show what kind of character this person is, right? So it's not just like mundane dialogue, like, like a good morning, how are you, that kind of thing, which doesn't really add to the story, right? So this is something that we constantly tell our students as well. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. So using some precise vocabulary as well is a great technique. So encourage your child to replace dull verbs and like vague nouns with vivid, specific language. Instead of like walked quickly, you can use like hurried, raced, strode. Instead of saying said, you can try murmured, snapped, exclaimed. I always find this such a great conversation starter in the classroom. Um, Quite often I go through like how can I walk? And then it's just you can go through so many different some verbs to describe different ways of walking to set the tone to show the mood of a character. So it really, yeah, it does enhance the writing a lot. Okay. So yeah, vocabulary, it does build up over time. So reading extensively helps, but so does engaging in varied writing tasks like these, for example. So exposure and usage lead to growth. Just a little quick tip, actually. So once you've actually completed your composition, it's good to take a few minutes to scan through and upgrade the vocabulary that you have written. So swap out any simple words for more precise or vivid alternatives. So this small final step can make a big difference and may help gain a few extra marks in both language and content. Yeah, it's a good habit to get into.
So I think one very easy thing that all of you can tell your children right now is after they've finished their writing, just to look at all the adverbs they've used, for example, quickly or slowly, or what's another one? Quickly, slowly. Um, mm, can you give me another one, Jesse?
Oh, it's instead
Yeah.
of yeah, so
Yeah, or quietly, right? So
yeah.
the thing is, if they find all these adverbs and then look at the verb before, so if he said like if the sentence is talked quietly, I mean just find a single word to replace that, like whispered,
Mm,
right? Ran quickly, like what Jesse mentioned earlier, right? Yeah, dashed, yeah, zoomed, So that's a real um easy thing that they can even start doing right now. And these are the small things that actually will add up in the readability of the story. Like, once you see these words in the story itself, it aids in the reading. Okay, it becomes a lot smoother, as it were. Yeah. All
yeah.
right.
Okay, so next is varying sentence structure. So using a mix of short, long, and more complex sentences really adds like rhythm and sophistication to writing. So, for example, I froze. The wind howled behind me, and I knew I had only seconds to decide. So, just the short sentence, I froze, is just a great introduction to further detail. So, This variety maintains the reader's interest and demonstrates the writer's command of sentence control, a critical component in composition examinations. So, when used intentionally, these techniques build depth, enhance engagement, and showcase a wide range of language abilities, essential for achieving strong writing outcomes. Okay, so ending. End with an impact. So a strong ending wraps up the story in a satisfying and meaningful way. So it should not feel rushed, disconnected, or like an afterthought. Instead, guide your child to close their narrative with purpose and reflection. So a good ending ties back to the main emotion, the conflict, or the theme of the story, giving a sense of closure and leaving the reader with something to think about. Actually, quick question. Can anyone think of any examples of any books, like a TV series, a film, anything that maybe had quite a disappointing ending? Like you invested all your time in watching or reading it, and then at the last 5 minutes, you just couldn't believe it. If you can think of anything, feel free to contribute in the chat.
Yeah, so I think one of the um, common complaints I've had marking some of the students' stories is that there was one stage where they would write really fantastic stories. You know, they would go into all kinds of like realms of fantasy, but at the end they couldn't explain it well, so they would say something like, "Oh, it was all a dream." So
Yeah.
that's very anticlimactic, right? So those types of endings really leave the reader like, wanting to just chuck the story or something like that. I think it's important that they think not just about the plot itself, but how it ends. And ending is really just as important as the rest, because that's like the last thing the reader will actually remember about the story. Yeah.
Mm.
Mm.
I think just to add to this as well, I think sometimes it's to do with time management.
Yeah.
Maybe they can invest all their time into planning and really
Mm.
thinking about the brilliant development of the story, and then they panic because they have like 3 minutes left, and then they
Yeah.
just finish it off very quickly. And I'm like, as a teacher, it's so frustrating because I know that obviously they're very capable of greatness sometimes, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's just that time management. So another
But
skill to practice.
yeah, it goes back to the planning and yeah,
Yeah.
time management. Yep, absolutely.
Okay. So I'm just going to go through a few effective strategies that we use, obviously, at the Eton Academy in our journals. So there's just a few examples. So the first one is like thoughts, feelings, and motivations. So just an example of this would be, as I walked home, I couldn't stop smiling. I knew I had made the right choice.
Mhm.
So yeah. Another one is like a lesson learnt, or maybe like if there's a strong moral in the story. So an example of this would be, from that day on, I learned never to jump to conclusions without hearing the full story. Lastly, memories or reflections. So looking back, I realized how much that day had changed me. Okay. Another example here is Lily smiled as she helped Max up from the muddy ground. Best friends always stick together, she said, and this time she really meant it. And yeah, so this ending would tie back to the theme of friendship and shows how the character has changed. And actually, just to add another quick tip, um, always encourage your child to use the same keywords or suitable synonyms that from the composition question in their writing. So this not only ensures that they stay on topic, but also helps to link the ideas clearly back to the task. So something examiners will look out for when awarding content marks as well. Yeah. Okay, so checking. I think this step again is quite often missed out, and I feel this is something that I feed back to parents quite often. Yeah, so and I think some of my students are always like, Teacher Jessie, you tell us to double check all the time, but there is very good reason. So this is the final polish. This is where you can edit and improve your writing. So once writing is complete, many students rush to hand it in, but editing is where the magic happens. So encourage your child to read their composition at least twice. So the first read would be you check for clarity and a logical flow. So ask yourself, does everything make sense? Yeah. A second reading would be you focus on the grammar, the punctuation, the spelling, the sentence structure. Yeah. And a few strategies to tackle some of those. For example, circling any like common mistakes like missing punctuation or tenses. So you're identifying, well, your children are identifying their errors, but then they can think about correcting them. Also, have a checklist. Encourage your children to ask themselves, like, did I include dialogue, descriptive phrases, a strong hook, and a conclusion? So, yeah. And then lastly, I always encourage to read aloud if possible. So this is an excellent way of catching awkward phrasing or like any missing words. Yeah, I often have to do this myself. Yeah. Okay. So I think over time, these habits that, yeah, they build independence and they help your child take ownership of their writing. So just to summarize, a powerful composition is one that is planned thoughtfully, starts with impact, develops rich characters and ideas using strong techniques, ends with meaning, and is carefully edited. So these habits, they do take time to build, but with your support and like consistent practice, your child can write with confidence, flair, and clarity. Okay. So thank you very much. I'll pass you back over to Hugh.
Okay, thanks for that, Jesse. Let me just get back some control here. Okay, hang on for a second. Uh, okay. Right. Okay. So yeah, before I go through our class schedules, I'll just leave this here for a bit. I don't know if you noticed, but as Jesse was sharing some of the different techniques that we teach at the Eton Academy, we were actually using some snapshots of our actual journals, our actual worksheets that the students actually use in class. And we always refer to very good recognized award-winning books uh, as examples because we feel that when we use these good authors, it really adds credibility to the different techniques that are being used. Okay, so that's just a feature that we have in our during our lessons. Yeah, okay, in our journals. Yeah. Okay, so let me just very quickly talk about our English class schedule for those who are interested. Oops, sorry, those are interested to come in to have maybe have a trial, come and have a look at what how we do things at Eton Academy. At Canberra Plaza, we have one center there. So our P4 and P4 to P6 classes are as such. Now don't worry, you can actually find all this information on our websites as well on our website as well. So you can easily go there and even book for a trial class as well. Yep. We have another branch at Great World City. So there we have P4 and P5 classes. Okay. And then we also have classes at Sengkang and Woodleigh Mall. Okay. So Sengkang is at Sengkang Grand Mall. Yep. So again, I'll just leave that here for a bit in case you want to take note of the time, different timings of the classes. Okay, right. Okay, and speaking of Woodleigh Mall, we are going to have an experience day really soon. That's on the 18th of May on a Sunday from 11 to 3 p.m. Okay, and there's an exclusive offer going on. We are offering complimentary trials, not just for P4 to P6. We're giving trials from N2 all the way to P6. So you can come down and experience what it's like to be in one of our classes. Okay, just for that experience day. Okay, so you can scan the QR code there for more information, and you can register your interest, and one of our colleagues will get back to you with your inquiry or your request. Okay, so please join us that day on the 18th of May from 11 to 3 at Woodley Mall. Okay, we are also actually advertising our after school care, which we are also going to be offering at Woodley Mall as well. Okay, just for your information. Yep. Okay. Let's see. All right, Jesse, can you help me check in the chat if there are any other questions?
Yes, there are a couple of questions. So,
Right.
my child has no real interest in reading books.
Mm.
Is this fatal to learning to write a good story?
Well, I think we know that answer, right? Okay, because reading and writing, I mean, it it just goes together. Now, what I can say is for children who don't enjoy reading, and I mean your child is not the only one, okay? There are many children who don't enjoy reading very much. And I got to say, especially boys, I don't know if I'm making a very broad statement here, but that's my experience. Anyway, um, the thing about it is we have to get them started somehow. So what I always recommend to my students' parents is get them to start reading things that they are interested in. Like topics they're interested in. So let's say they enjoy um uh fantasy. Let them read fantasy books. If they enjoy, I don't know, cars, for example, read, books about cars, right? Just get them in the door first, and then slowly try to introduce other things, which they might not have, they might even realize it's something they actually enjoy doing. Okay, so I think it's important that we start with their interests, and then try to build from there. Yeah. Um, of course, when they go for lessons, like at Eton Academy, for example, we go through lots of reading material as well. So as they're going through the lesson, they're actually reading quite a bit. So that will definitely also help. Uh, and you can't just it's not just reading a storybook all the time. You could be reading other sources as well. Yeah.
Thank you. Um, oh, on the topic of reading, my
Mm.
child prefers graphic novels that are pretty
Yes.
common these days.
Yes.
So these do not contribute directly to writing skills. Yes.
Yeah. Well, okay. So again, a very common question. Nowadays, many of the students, they enjoy reading those comic style books, right? Now, I won't say that you shouldn't allow them to do that. I think it's fine because again, as long as they're reading something, it's good. And there are story ideas they can get also from there. Okay, but of course, the trick is that can't just be what they're reading. They have to read other things as well. Okay, so I think in those cases, again, going back to their interests, try to find actual books along the same theme of those comic books. If it's like a superhero thing, maybe find a book about a superhero. You know, it's important because you know how they say pictures paint 1,000 words, right? So the thing is that in a comic book, one picture tells a lot, but how do they translate that into words? So that's where actual books come into the picture. Of course, you could also ask them to look at a comic book and ask them to, based on the picture, to write it in the form of paragraphs. I mean, you could try doing that, and some students might do that, but again, I feel that if they are interested in a particular theme or topic, try to get books along those lines. Yeah, don't let them just read comics. That will not help in their vocabulary development, especially in the
Okay.
descriptive elements, right? Yeah.
Mm. We have another parent here that says that
Yeah.
their child reads a lot and
Mm.
lots of different styles of
Okay.
books as well,
Mm.
but she doesn't see how that is translated into better compositions.
Okay. So again, it it all depends on, okay, so reading a lot, reading widely will give your child more ideas for sure. It also will build vocabulary. Okay,
Mm.
so the question is, despite reading widely, is is she actually using the words that she's learned? Is she copying techniques that she has picked up in these stories, right? So I think that's something that you might want to consider asking her to do. Like if she sees a nice, for example, a great introduction to one of her stories, maybe ask her to to write that same style but change the context. So that's one of the exercises that we actually do. Okay, it's called mimicking. So we mimic the author's style, right? So these are some of the things that they can do to directly show the relationship between reading and putting that into writing as well. Yeah.
And just one last one. If we can go back to one of the slides
Yeah.
before Red Sky, I think the book.
Oh, okay.
Maybe I went through that a bit fast.
Let me just
Ah, yes, yeah. Oh,
which is
this one, I believe.
this
If
the
it's
one?
incorrect, you can let me know in the chat. Okay, I think that's correct.
Is this the one?
I think so.
What was the question though?
Just asked to go back to the slide.
Oh, just the website.
Yeah.
Okay. Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe I went through it a bit fast. Oh, if there's any other final questions. Oh, it's correct. Thank you. The slide I meant.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Oh,
I'll just leave it here first. Yeah.
yeah.
Is there another question I see pop up?
Just says thanks for the session.
Oh, right. Okay. Thank you
Love
so
the feedback. Thank you.
thank you so much.
We appreciate it.
Yes, we do. We do. Um,
Oh,
again, please come and join us at any one of our centers. Okay. Again, you can just go to the website, find out where we are. Come down to Woodleigh Mall on the 18th if you're able to. Enjoy a free trial lesson to experience what we do at the Eton Academy. Um, and yeah, I hope to see everyone there. Okay. So if there are no other questions, thank you so much for your time and good night, everyone.
thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, I think we have just have 3 more attendees. Okay, I think I'll just uh, move. Okay, right. All right.
Just
I
us.
think that's just us. Yeah. I don't know what
Um,
happened because okay, let me just stop.